everyone. Welcome back to our discussion of Swift and Introduction to UIKit. So in the last video, we kind of went over gave an overview of UIKit. In this video, we'll use Xcode and we'll actually dig into UIKit. Okay, so here I am in Xcode. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to make a brand new project. So I'm going to go to the File menu. You can actually just click this button right here. But you can also create a new project by going to the File menu and choosing New Project. Okay, so we get a dialog box here that asks us what kind of project do we want to create. So what you're going to do is you're going to choose platform of iOS and then choose app as the project type. So these are just default project templates that you can start with, and they provide a few for us, okay? I'm going to choose app as the project, and I'll click next. And then you can give your project a name. I'm going to call this Magic 8-Ball, okay? And then we can put this on the desktop. Before we save this, though, let's make sure we have the right settings. So what we're going to do is we're going to choose a team, or you can put none. And then for your organization identifier, you can use anything here. Typically what people do is they use a reverse domain name. And the reason why is ideally the organization identifier should be unique, right? So every app has a unique organization name. And if you use a reverse domain name, you know that that's unique, okay? Next, for this project, we're going to choose Storyboard. So you can click on the menu. In the last project, we used Swift UI. In this one, we're going to use Storyboard. So select Storyboard, and then under Lifecycle Methods, this should say UIKit App Delegate, okay? Language should be Swift, and then these boxes can be unchecked, okay? So next, click Next, right? And choose a location to save your project in. So I'm going to save my project to the desktop, and I'll click Create, and then there's the project there. Okay, so let's take a look. So you'll notice this is what the project looks like in Xcode, but what it created on the desktop was this folder. Now, I'm going to open up the folder and take a look at it. And what you'll see here is not exactly what Xcode is showing me. So it shows me this file list, but it doesn't look exactly the same, right? So if I close this up, you can see it shows Magic 8-Ball at the top level, and then it shows Magic 8-Ball and products, and over here I see Magic 8-Ball and Xcode project, right? And then the Git folder, right? The Git folder is invisible, so you might not see it. I have show invisibles turned on so I can see it, but anyway, if we open up Magic 8-Ball, you'll see it says App Delegate and some other things. And if I open up the Magic 8-Ball folder here, I see some of those App Delegate, Scene Delegate, right? Okay, so while these are similar, they're not exactly the same, right? The files that you create here in your Xcode project will generate real files that you see in the project, but this project or .xcode project file right here actually manages the files and keeps track of them. And some of the files you won't see at all. So for example, info plist doesn't exist here, right? We don't see it. And the same thing with this products folder, okay? So, and also notice the order of the files here is different from the order of the files in the folder. So the folder here, all the files are listed alphabetically, but here they're not necessarily listed alphabetically, right? And if you drag them, you can move them around. So if I move main storyboard up here, or if I move, let's move scene delegate down to the bottom there and app delegate down here, right? You'll see that they change places and they stay where they are, but that doesn't affect how the file system is going to list the files. So what's going on here? Well, like I said, the Xcode project file keeps track of all of the files and the files that you can't see, and it keeps track of how they're displayed and how they're presented to you in this file lister inside Xcode, okay? So what that means is that you should more likely not edit the files that are in the folder here. So you usually don't want to edit the files that are on the desktop. Now, in some situations, you might do that just to fix something or make changes, but generally what you should do is you should always edit the files in Xcode. So always edit things here. right? Because sometimes you can create a file or edit a file over here on the desktop and Xcode won't understand that you made a change. And then it doesn't recognize the changes that you created, okay? So in general, we don't want to edit the files in the folder. Just keep the whole folder as the project itself, and you just edit the things here in the Xcode interface. Okay, great. So let's move on. So we've got our files here. What else do we have? Well, on the left side we have a view of various different things. This button up here shows us files. This one shows us some other stuff. I think that's version control, and one of these is debug. One of these is tests, right? And you can click on these, right? Generally, we want to stay in the file section because this shows us all the information that we're working with, right? In the center here, we have an editor, right? So the editor right here allows us to edit whatever is selected in the column here. So if I select the project, it shows me information about the project, and I can change this. If I click on Storyboard, it shows me the storyboard for my project. If I click on Swift, viewcontroller.swift, then it shows me that view controller file, right? And I can edit the Swift file. In the right side, we have another column, and this one is the property inspector. So generally, like when you select something on the left side, the right side shows you information about the thing that's selected. So for example, if I click on the view controller file here, it shows me information about the view controller. And I don't see anything here, but if I click on the file information, it tells me the name is viewcontroller.swift. The type is default Swift source file. It's relative to group and some other things, right? So you can click on these and kind of work through it, right, to see what it shows you. And depending on what you're selected, it'll show you different information. Okay, so so that's a general layout of Xcode, right? And you'll learn more. Xcode has like a lot of stuff built into it. It'd take us days to go through everything. Okay, so how do we make a project in Xcode? In Swift UI, we wrote code, right, in our UI file, our Swift UI file, and that code generated a view. In UIKit, what we're going to do is we're going to use Storyboard. So we have a main storyboard for our project. I'm going to click on it right now, main storyboard. And what we're going to do is we're going to draw our view like graphically, right, rather than use code to create it, okay? So, so here's my view, and you can see that it's empty, there's nothing in it, and it kind of looks like a phone, right? So that's the view that I have here, right? Let's create some elements here. So all of the elements that are built in are on a palette. I'm going to go to the view show library, this one, right? So Shift Command L is our shortcut, right? And here you'll see when I open this up, I get a palette and it lists all of the built-in user interface stuff, okay? And some of these are it's hard to understand what they do because they're a little abstract, like object, like what is that, right? Tap gesture recognizer, right? At the top here, we have some pretty standard user interface elements. These are pretty easy to understand, okay? So first of all, we got a label, button, segmented controller, text field, slider, switch, activity indicator, progress bar, page control, stepper, and a bunch more, right? So all of these things here are probably user interface elements that you've seen before, right? So let's imagine we're going to recreate the Magic 8-Ball app, right? So and you're working on that for your tutorial. I'm going to drag a label out onto the screen here, and you can see there it is. And then maybe I'll go Command Shift L to bring up the library, and I'll drag a button into the view here. Okay. And there we go. There's our app. So let's just imagine that's our app. We haven't done anything with this yet, but let's imagine that that's it. And let's imagine now we want to test it and see what it looks like. So I can kind of see it here, but what does it really look like on the phone, and how does it work, right? So to test it, you can click this big button right here. It's like, it looks like a play button, right? And when you click this, what's going to happen is you're going to open, it's going to build your app. It's going to compile all of your code here and then build it and install it on a simulation of the iPhone, okay? So it opens up, this is called the iPhone simulator. So here you can see, here's the iPhone simulator, and it looks like it's simulating the iPod Touch 7th generation, okay? That's a weird choice. I don't know why it chose that one, but that was, I guess that was the default one that was selected. And you can see it doesn't quite look the same as my app here, okay? And that's okay. Really what I'm getting is if I line this up here, you see where I kind of lined it up like one above the other. This screen is a lot wider. I put the label in the middle, so it's about here, but this screen would extend off the edge a ways, right? You know, and if I look at where the label is, you can see it's about the same distance from the top here, right? And this button right here must be off the bottom edge because this screen is a lot taller than the iPhone 7th generation screen, right? Okay, so so how do we fix that, right? Well, Storyboard, which is what we're looking at over here, has a series of features. They're called constraints, right? There's actually a few features under this, but the first one is constraints. And constraints allow us to determine how and where things appear on the screen, right? How big they are, how tall they are, and how far from the edges or from another element something is, right? And we can give it rules for how those elements are drawn, okay? Before we get into that, let's actually look at the simulator again. I'm actually going to shut the simulator down, right? So I'll stop it there, and of course, like, gives me some error there. That's okay though. So I'm going to go back to my main storyboard here, and what I'd like to do now is I'd like to try a different version of the simulator. So I'm going to go to the menu up here. You see it says Magic 8 Ball, and then it says iPod Touch 7th generation. I'm going to click on this and choose, let's choose iPhone 8, okay? And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the play button again, and I guess I have to stop that other thing from running. Oh yeah, there we go. There's my iPhone 8 over here, and it's launching, right? So I'm going to wait for this to run, and then we'll see what it looks like. Oh, there we go. So now we see it. It's still smaller than this. This must be like an iPhone 13 or iPhone 12 or whatever it is, right? So anyway, so I see this, and now you can see like the button, it's still kind of the same distance from the top, or the label is, and then the button is further down, but now we can see it, right? But ideally, we'd always want the button to be maybe the same distance from the bottom and the label to be the same distance from the top, and then maybe both of these should be in the center, right? Okay, so there we go. We can simulate you know, any one of the devices that are on the menu here, right? And ideally, we'd want our app to run on any and all of these, right? Okay, so one more thing before we dig into constraints, right? The simulator here, it's important to understand, is it's actually simulating the phone. So this goes a step beyond the canvas that we had in Swift UI. So it's actually loading up like a whole processor that's acting like an iPhone. And you can see it has buttons on the side here that you can click just like on your iPhone. It's a little hard to read that, but you can see here's the buttons right there. So you can click on these, right? There's a button at the bottom, like a home button. And if you click on that, it takes you home on the iPhone. You can go to settings on your iPhone and set the settings here, right? You can sign into Facebook on the iPhone simulator and run Facebook on the iPhone simulator. If you click home, I can go here. You'll notice if I go to the next screen here, you see it installed the Magic 8 Ball app, right? So it actually made the app that we're running, it built it, and then it installed it on the desktop of the phone, okay? So, so the simulator works just like the phone. So like, you know, the canvas in Swift UI is pretty good, but if you want to take it one level further, is we use the simulator here to see how it works. And you can also build and run the projects on your personal phone, like your hardware phone, right? You have to connect the cable to the device, and then you should be able to choose your phone from the menu here, okay? So it says like, no devices connected. So if I plug my phone in, I can choose the phone from the menu, and then when I build, it'll actually build the app and install it on your phone. So you can try that also, okay? So let's try adding some constraints, and we'll just get started. The constraints are pretty deep. There's actually a lot that they can do. Let's just get started with them here. So now the core concept, actually, you know, maybe I'll do this. This video is getting pretty long. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the video here, and then I'll make the next video about constraints. And then in that way, if you want to skip ahead and just look at constraints, that video will just be separate, like if you want to go back and review it, okay? So anyway, thanks for watching, and then we'll continue in the next video.